How to farm 308 motes of pure void an hour. This is by far the best way I could find to farm these in such massive quantities. This is a mining and herbalism farm, so we're getting loads of herb and ore from doing this as well. So lots of gold from that perspective too. In this video, we're covering the mechanics to farm the motes of the pure void, the profession setup we need. Motes of pure void are used in loads of crafts in Midnight, and there are many sources for them, such as fishing, disenchanting, transmutation, skinning. But we're going to be doing it through mining and herbalism, like we said. So we're running a dual mining and herbalism overload spec here. This is going to use a lot of knowledge points. You need to be grabbing every single secret knowledge point to min-max what you can do here so you get the most gold per hour. I have a herbalism and mining guides to show you this, but I also have 3 written guides for every profession on the community gold making Discord link below. We want 40 points in overload and 40 points in void bound in both the herbalism and mining. That's nice and simple at least. You need to be either a druid with flight forms. This is so that we can collect herbs while mounted. For mining, 40 points in metallicious mining is pretty insane. This gives us mining while mounted. Although this isn't necessarily mandatory for this spec, it does really help. Not only is it a huge quality of life upgrade, but also speeds you up quite a bit. This setup is all about hitting as many nodes as possible, so this helps with that. Profession gear wise, I have a deafness tool with a deafness enchant. I just used this because it was what I had on the beta and it made it easier. I think most people will probably use finesse, but it's not really going to make that much difference for this farm in particular. At the end of the day, you don't obviously need all the knowledge points to be able to do the farm, but obviously you're going to get lesser results if you don't have them. Overload infused deposit and overload infused herb both are 12-hour cooldowns that when used on a void bound deposit or herb are going to spawn loads of void orbs that you just need to run around and collect. You can get a lot of motes from every single overload, so this is what we are doing to hit over 300 motes an hour. Now you are still going to get some motes from void bound nodes that you don't overload. You won't be overloading most of these, but it's just going to be a bit less. When you overload a void bound, you get a portal. It seems to just go to another random location within Midnight open world. You have an ability that can return you straight back to the location in Voidstorm that you came from as well. I don't really get this. Sometimes you go through and there's maybe some nodes nearby, but even if you get multiple nodes, it's just not worth the effort of going through 2 loading screens to get it. So I basically just skip these portals, but what you do with that is up to you. From both mining and herbalism, we get exactly the same effects from this knowledge. Throughout the initial node in the overload tree, we get multiple bonuses saying the amount of overload cooldown refunded by gathering is increased. We have a 12-hour cooldown on overload, but we get cooldown reduction each time we gather. When the knowledge is properly set up, you get massive chunks of cooldown reduction when gathering. It's just over 30 minutes cooldown reduction you get for every deposit or herb you farm once you have the full knowledge set up. The plan is then we overload these void bound nodes with our herbalism and mining, and then we're just going to run around and just farm as many herbs and as much ore as we can to reset that cooldown so we can do the same again. The final point in the base node gives you a second overload charge, and at first glance, it looks completely underwhelming. I get why people dismiss it without testing. On paper, it doesn't sound exciting at all. In practice though, for this setup, it's one of the most important parts of the build. What happens very often is you get your overload back, but then you might not see another void bound node for maybe 5 minutes or so. So basically every single node you hit after that is all wasted cooldown reset time that you could have been using. If you have only a single overload charge, then all of the cooldown reduction you earn during that window from gathering herbs or mining ore is effectively wasted, which is kind of like really annoying. The other issue is it means you're kind of like forced into sometimes doing your overload in places that are not ideal and can potentially get less motes from that as well. Having a second charge fixes that problem entirely. It means every node you gather is still contributing cooldown reduction, even if you haven't found another void bound node yet. In other words, nothing is wasted and your overload uptime becomes far more consistent, even when your node spawns are unlucky. Some of the bonuses in the void bound node are actually pretty solid as well once you get to them. At 20 points, overload gains extra cooldown reduction when used on void nodes, giving you even more cooldown reduction. So that's a big chunk of cooldown back. Yes, it only applies to void bound nodes, which are rarer, but any additional cooldown reduction here is still extremely valuable and directly improves how often you can overload overall. The last point is massive. We basically just get a lot more motes from each time we overload, which is huge considering this is what this build and farm is all about. It's kind of hard to suggest what you should push for first. The last point in Void Bound is huge, but there's a huge amount of cooldown recovery in the basic overload node. The extra charge on top of that's really nice as well. On top of that, was probably even more important, the basic overload node, if you go for that first, it hasn't locked you in to farming one type of mote, whereas if you go for void bound, it does. The route is all in the description below. You can just copy and paste it straight into your add-ons from there, and you can just do it from there. It works well, and you should get loads and loads of void motes from doing this. If this video was helpful, please leave it a like. Cheers, guys.